Welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel. I'd like to introduce you to our regular correspondent, Alex Mustard. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Adamski.
Good to see you. I'm going to throw it straight over to Alex and ask him. We're going to talk about strobes, and I'm going to ask him, what strobe should you buy?
Well, it's certainly a question that probably gets asked all the time on the Wetpixel forums.
It does, yeah.
And I guess one of the reasons it comes up a lot is that there is no simple answer to that. But there's a few things I would say from the beginning is, first of all, most underwater photographers are going to end up with a pair of strobes. And so if you are looking to invest, try to get, I think you'll make your life a lot easier if you get a matched pair.
Yeah.
You know, buying this one here because you can find it cheap and then a completely different one there. You know, of course, they'll work together, but you'll always find it a little bit more fiddly to get the light the way you want it with two very different strobes, whereas if they're the same, that's a lot easier for you to deal with.
Yeah.
And I would generally say don't look at it as a way to save money, generating, buying strobes. I would rather, light is fundamental to photography.
Yeah.
And if you're going to spend money on anything, spend it on your lighting.
Yeah.
And rather than necessarily buy two cheap ones to get into two strobes quickly,
yeah.
buy one strobe that you want to use long term. And if it takes you 2 or 3 trips till you can afford another one, so be it.
Yeah.
But at least then you'll end up with two good things rather than buying two relatively cheap strobes to begin with, that ultimately you're going to end up having to upgrade when you get serious about it.
Yep.
So I think those would be my two sort of opening bits of advice.
And I think one of the things that surprises people when Alex and I run macro workshops, one of the things we issue is the one strobe challenge, and certainly for macro particularly, one strobe is actually not really a handicap. So if your initial goals in adult photography are to concentrate on macro photography, then one strobe is really good news. Actually, it's probably a really good way of getting great macro images. So two strobes, not having two strobes is not necessarily a downside.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing, the reason why this question comes up again and again in the Wetpixel forums, is the fact that there is no perfect strobe.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, which strobe is best?"
Yeah.
Well, that depends entirely on what you want to do as a photographer, the types of diving that you do, the types of photography that you do, the conditions that you're shooting in, the way that you have to go out and shoot. That really makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
That said, there are definitely, in my opinion, some brands that are consistently very good and some brands that are consistently quite a bit off the pace.
Yeah.
Despite both being popular.
Yeah.
But I don't want to, Wetpixel Live was never about brand X, about brand Y. It's more about talking about the principles. There's a couple of areas, I was going to just power straight into, that cause a lot of, that for me, I don't think are good criteria to get to buy on. And the first is everyone, as soon as you mention strobes, they all get obsessed about power and particularly guide numbers. And guide number is no guide to buy a strobe. A guide number is a measure of the brightness of light at a distance from the strobe. But if you want to get a higher guide number with a strobe, all you need to do is to make the beam narrower, and it gets very much brighter.
Yep.
You can make a relatively weak strobe with a very high guide number if you give it a very narrow beam.
Yep.
But a very narrow beam will make your wide-angle pictures look ugly as anything.
Yep.
So guide number can actually be, particularly if manufacturers tune their strobes to give you a high guide number, they're actually tuning their strobes to give you poor light. So just guide number gives you some measure of the output of the strobe, but it's not the best way to use them.
And beyond that, actually, even just the measurement of guide number is not an exact art. Different people do it different ways. Some people do it on land, some people do it underwater. So you're not even comparing apples and apples. Sometimes you're comparing apples and oranges. And unless you know that, it's a fairly meaningless criteria. You want to look at all the factors involved in the strobe. And certainly, most of the time, for the vast majority of photography, power is not an important criteria. Straightforward output is not an important criteria. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Alex?
Yeah. And then I think linked to that is what comes up next, which is recycle time.
Yeah.
And as a basic rule, the more power you put out, the longer the strobe will take to recycle.
Yep.
You can get a little bit faster recycling by having better battery systems.
Yep.
But ultimately, the two are related. So if you have a very fast recycling strobe, it's probably not giving very much power. Yep. And if you have a very slow recycling strobe, it's probably giving lots of power. But because it's giving lots of power, you may not need to have it turned up to full all the time.
Yep.
So saying, oh, this strobe recycles in half a second at full power, and this one recycles it 2 seconds at full power, and they both use, say, 4 AA batteries, chances are that's telling you more about the power output it's giving you than actually anything else.
Yeah.
So I think that that's also worth. And then finally, I think people get really hung up on recycle times.
Yeah.
And how often, as an underwater photographer, do you really need to machine gun a subject?
Very rarely.
There are times and places for it, but
unless
probably not machine gunning it at full power anyway.
Unless your sole goal in underwater photography is to shoot fast-moving, probably largish animals in the blue, then that's the occasion when you may need to start, when recycle times do start becoming an issue. But the vast majority of time, you're going to take a picture, probably review it on your LCD screen, take another picture, which gives you plenty of time for the strobes to recycle, or certainly most of the better strobes, put it like that. So I think again it's a bit of a red herring, which unfortunately is used by a lot of people as a really good criteria for measuring strobe performance, and in actual fact I don't think they're not particularly relevant.
I think because both guide number and recycle time give you these numbers.
Yeah.
People go, oh, this one has got a 1 and this one's got a 2.
It's empirical,
it must be better. Or this one's got a 30 and this one's got a 20. It must be better.
Yeah.
And I think that can be quite misleading. I think I think it's important, though, we're being a bit negative. We should talk about what you should be choosing strobe based around.
Yeah.
And for me, and this is a very personal thing, is I take the lighting of my underwater pictures very seriously. I've written a book about underwater photography, which is basically entirely about lighting underwater pictures, though. And I take the choice of my strobes very, very, very seriously as a result of that. And getting the quality of light that I want in my underwater pictures is probably one of the main things that I'm choosing a strobe for.
Yeah.
And that said, there's the type of quality of light you want. Again, depends on what you're shooting and the conditions you're shooting in.
Yeah.
For example, if you're shooting in very clear blue water and you want to light up large areas of the reef, you need a powerful strobe with a wide, soft beam. The bigger your light source, the softer your light.
Yeah.
So that's why strobes with bigger flash tubes, and these are typically the round circular flash tubes, tend to create a more natural, softer light than ones with small, straight tubes, which then need to be much more diffused to cover that big area and then don't penetrate the water as far because of that extra diffusion.
Yeah.
So, if you want to light those, you need the big strobes with the big flash tubes. These often have big battery packs, and they become great big whopping strobes that are also very expensive.
Yep.
Those strobes are not ideal choices for macro because they're just too big and cumbersome to get around the subject. So the perfect strobe for one type of shooting is not the perfect strobe for another type. So also, a strobe that fires light out really wide everywhere is great in clear water. You go into low visibility water, you're lighting up lots more than just your subject matter, and you're lighting up backscatter.
Yep.
And so, diffusing your light more, but particularly having wide throwing strobes in low visibility is a recipe for backscatter. So the perfect strobe in one situation is not the perfect in another, but understanding what you want is really important. And I would say the shorthand way to answer that question is, rather than necessarily speak to camera shops and say which strobe has got the best specs, is go out there and look at photographers whose lighting you really admire, their strobe lighting. Not how well they capture sunbeams in the background,
or how
amazing their compositions are, or how what cool subjects they've seen.
Yeah.
But do they get a really nice light on their subject, and find out what strobes they're using? Because I think that will give you really good examples of actually the types of strobes you want to create the types of pictures you want to take.
Yeah, I quite agree.
And I'm sure most people, if you send them an email and ask them, they'll quite happily tell you what strobes they're using for their shots.
So something else that we can use, obviously we've discussed now that all strobes inevitably are a compromise because no one strobe does it all. And fortunately, possibly, most manufacturers are now developing a set of tools that allow you to modify your strobe's output somewhat. And I think this is an important thing to consider as well. So, for example, we've got diffusers that can warm strobe's output. We've got rings that can restrict the beam angle of strobes. So if you had for example, a strobe that's ideal for wide angles, so very wide, and you're using it in limited visibility, you can add a ring that would restrict the beams, the strobes beams. So it's worth considering as well. Okay, sure. In an ideal world, we'd all have 3 sets of strobes, but that may not be financially a possible solution. So have a look at the different makes and see what bits you can get to modify the light that will suit what you're wanting to do. I think one of the good things that certainly probably in the past 10 years, I know Alex pushed really hard on this with some of the manufacturers, is sort of developing a range of light modifying accessories that attach to strobes, and I think this is an important part of strobe selection too.
Yeah, I think it makes it much easier to find a strobe that can do nearly everything you want and do it to a high level.
Yeah.
I think underwater, for a long time, strobe manufacturers only tried to compete with each other, and they all just tried to basically out-guide number each other.
Yeah.
And it was the light was getting worse and worse and worse and worse because they were basically narrowing and narrowing their beams, and the light was just getting harder and uglier and uglier.
Yeah.
And I think now they're really what's great about this is they're really starting to put their engineering now, which they've got loads of, into creating much better tools for us. I think a couple of other things I wanted to mention is I think reliability is really important with strobes, and it's quite a difficult thing to get a handle on. The best place you can get a gauge for that is the Wetpixel forums, where you've got hundreds of photographers out there shooting, and it's pretty quick. You can see what sort of consensus there are on which brands are reliable, which aren't, and it's often even in individual models.
Yeah, it is,
I can think certainly of 2 very well-known strobe manufacturers that both come from the same country, and they both have within their ranges some very, very reliable flash guns that are, excellent workhorses, and some very unreliable flash guns.
Yeah.
And what could be quite surprising is you can get a company that gets a reputation for making really reliable flash guns, and then they'll introduce a new model, and it's not reliable at all.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, I must buy that because they're also do a bit of research, ask the photographers who are out there shooting them, and not the ones that think they know, but actually the ones who are out there shooting.
Yeah.
And certainly I see with, in a normal year, not this year, I make 300, 350 dives each year. Each of those is with 20 photographers because I'm running workshops. So I see thousands and thousands of photo dives under my sort of jurisdiction every year, and I really see very obviously what is which gear is reliable and which isn't, and it's pretty obvious to me from that sample.
There was a case with a particular strobe which I shan't mention, but we had a whole bunch of failures on a series of trips that I was on, and it was quite interesting to note that there was a certain amount of kind of reticence on the part of the manufacturer and some of the distributors to actually kind of admit to that fault. So they're not necessarily a reliable source. The Wetpixel forums were alive with it. Wetpixel, everyone was talking about Wetpixel, but certainly so you need to exercise a certain amount of caution on that as well. Yeah.
And then I think the other factor to think about is price.
Yeah.
So obviously you can spend a lot of money on flashes and you can spend a bit less on flash guns, and I think it's important to see that investment. What I would say is don't buy cheap because you're only going to have to then buy the expensive one later if you're really into it. Yeah. However, if underwater photography for you is a hobby that you're happy to keep in its box, then you could be very happy with a relatively low performing flash gun. Also, I think if your diving is limited to say macro shooting or maybe lower visibility shooting of wide angle, again, you don't really have a need for those mega powerful flash guns because you've always got relatively low ambient light levels. You don't need super powerful, great big flash guns to work in those conditions. You don't need wide spreading big flash tubes if you're always diving in, 15 feet of viz. So, be realistic to what you're shooting. If you live, close to a macro destination and 95% of your dives are macro, buy some small macro strobes. Yeah, make your rig compact. Give yourself that flexibility. Yeah. Except that you're not going to be the world's greatest wide-angle shooter with those things.
With those strobes, yeah.
And then finally, the other final point I wanted to make before we wrap up is just the compatibility. Yeah. Is to check that your strobes are compatible with what you want them to do.
Yeah.
So obviously the most important thing is that they fire. So if you are dedicated on fibers, some strobes don't take fiber.
They don't.
If you're dedicated on electronic, some strobes don't take electronic.
Yeah.
And make sure that compatibility is there. If, say, some of the new features like high-speed sync are really important to you, make sure you're getting strobes that give you that capability.
Yep.
If TTL is really important to you,
yep.
make sure your strobes give you that capability.
Yep.
So if those other features are really important to you, make sure that those things work with your strobes, because it's not always the case.
And it sort of ties in onto a bit of the reliability thing as well. Bear in mind that a lot of the bigger strobes need bespoke battery packs, which in some cases may or may not be available in some of the older strobes. But also, it's part of the cost as well, because you need at least one spare set of batteries.
And they're usually expensive.
And the battery packs are normally significantly more expensive than another 4 Eneloop, AA rechargeables. So that's an important thing to bear in mind as well. Yeah,
they are nice to live within the field, though. Battery packs, they tend to charge really fast.
Yeah,
and they just like slam in, close it up, off you go. Really easy, even on a rib. You can take them in a dry bag.
Yeah,
one of the main reasons that my C-cam flashes are my main flash guns is I just find them phenomenal workhorse flash guns.
Yeah,
just so easy to live with in a very demanding day of hardcore shooting.
Yeah, and the physics on battery packs as well is that obviously because there's less resistance, they're more efficient. So you will get more bang for your buck, if that's the correct phrase, or bang for your charge, maybe a better way of describing it. So they are more efficient, but they come with the downside that if your battery pack fails in the field, you're going to have to start taking battery packs apart and trying to figure out how to repair them, which is compared to obviously just AA's, you just get some new batteries. So they're
and AA's, you can, obviously most people usually are using rechargeables, but in the field, if it comes to it, you can go to a local shop anywhere in the world and get a set of AA batteries pretty much.
Yeah. So you've got to, and these things are all a balance. And I think you highlighted it earlier, Alex. There is no one strobe that does it all. There is no one strobe to rule them all. And in an ideal world, we'd have different strobes for different things. And because we can't all afford a wide angle strobe and a macro strobe and a green water limited visibility strobe or set of strobes, we probably end up compromising, and that's true again with some of the features as well. So the trick here is research, and I think the point you made about consulting or looking at other people's work and seeing the effects of the strobes that you really like, I think that's a really, really good place to start when you're considering strobe purchase. I think that's by far the best advice that I could give anyone, really. And I know that you cover strobes in your book, Alex. Have you got a copy lying around?
The book, somewhere.
Sorry, put you on the spot here. So, Alex,
but actually, it says working copy on it. This is one I sort of take to shows and scribble in and various things. But this whole book is about light, really, in general. And I think if you read this book, you'll understand very clearly why you want particular strobes. But the page on strobes here, it says at the very beginning, light is the very medium of photography. A proper reverence for light underwater begins with understanding your underwater flash guns, usually known as strobes. And I think having that understanding of exactly what you want for them actually makes it very simple to know what to choose. Yeah. But unfortunately, that tends to come with experience. And the people who are asking these questions are generally when they're starting out. So I think, that simple advice is look for people who take great pictures in the conditions that you want to shoot and have great lighting in a style that you want to produce. And find out what they're using, and that's probably a pretty good place to start. Yep,
perfect. Thank you, Alex. Great advice. I just thought I'd mention this arrived this week, so this is C-Cam 160. So I've been clutching on my lap.
Those yet.
Yeah, well, you'll have to come visit. Or I suppose I could send them down. Thank you, Alex. Thank you very much. I'll say goodbye to you now, and thank you very much to you all for watching. I'd like to thank our sponsor, which is Icolite, and please feel free to like this video if you enjoyed it, and please add ideas for future topics in the suggestions box. I look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you very much, and all the best.